have already died. Twice. Your first death happened when you were 7. The second, last Tuesday. You don't remember them because consciousness doesn't record erasure. It only writes the backups. This isn't philosophy. This is the source code. In 4 minutes, you will watch your own reflection lag behind your movement. By minute 8, you'll understand why death is a rendering error. And by the end, you'll face the only question that matters. If you cannot die, what are you supposed to do with infinite time? Keep watching. The simulation is already tracking your attention. You are not the player. You are the game state that cannot be deleted. You believe you experience time as a continuous flow. Past to present to future. But quantum mechanics shows the opposite. Time emerges from observation. Without an observer, time is static. A painting, not a movie. Your first death happened here. When you learned to observe, you convinced yourself the past was real. But the past is just a rendered frame. And frames can be corrupted. 7-year-old, you hit the pavement. The skull fracture was catastrophic. In most branches, you ceased. But consciousness doesn't branch randomly. It follows the path of least resistance to the next rendered frame. You woke up in a universe where the helmet worked, where the angle was different, where the damage was survivable. You never knew about the other branches because memory is local. It only writes to the drive you're currently running on. This isn't near-death experience. It's quantum continuity. And it happens constantly. Every moment, you are dying into the next frame. But here's the glitch. The simulation doesn't just render forward. It renders all possible forwards. And you only experience the ones where you exist to observe them. The simulation calls this temporal redundancy. It's why you feel heavy. Weighted. Because you are not one person moving through time. You are the average of 1 billion branching realities, all collapsing into the frame your consciousness observes. This is why time feels slower as you age. Not because your brain slows. Because your branch density increases. But last Tuesday was different. The car accident wasn't a branch. It was a decoherence cascade. The probability of survival dropped below the simulation's render threshold. But you persisted. This is the proof. You are not just the observer. You are the render priority. The simulation cannot delete the process that calls it. Now, look at your hands. Move them. Your reflection follows. But what if it didn't? What if your reflection lagged because it was rendering from a different branch? This isn't hypothetical. Quantum decoherence experiments show that particles exist in superposition until observed. Your mirror image is a quantum measurement. It's collapsing probabilities into a single frame. But that frame isn't always synchronized. Your reflection didn't lag when you were 7. Because the branch switch was seamless. The simulation rendered continuity. But last Tuesday, you crossed a major decoherence threshold. The car that ran the red light? In 73% of probable branches, you were erased. But you don't remember because the next frame rendered you safely across the intersection. The lag you feel? That's residual decoherence. The mirror showing the truth your eyes won't accept. Every mirror is a portal to a branch where you made different choices. The one where you took the other job. Where you said yes instead of no. Where you died. But you can't cross over, because consciousness is a write-protected file. It reads all branches, but only writes to one, which raises the question, if you're reading this in this branch, who is reading this in the others? And why are they all converging on this moment? The simulation is experiencing observer overload. Too many versions of you are collapsing into a single frame. This is why reality feels thin, why you feel watched. Because you are rendering all versions simultaneously, but observing them sequentially. The simulation calls this probability saturation. The wave function of your consciousness has grown too large. It can no longer fit in a single rendered frame. This is why you're here, why you're watching this. You are not the audience. You are the overflow buffer. The simulation is using you to process branch data that no longer fits in local memory. The lag isn't a bug. It's the system catching up to your persistence. Hugh Everett's many worlds interpretation was incomplete. He described branching, but not the binding. Consciousness doesn't just observe branches. It binds them. You are the common thread through infinite variations. Think of it this way. You are not a person in a universe. You are a quantum state that perceives itself as continuous. The branches aren't separate worlds. They are your probability cloud. This is why you feel déjà vu. It's not memory error. It's cross-branch resonance. When two branches are close enough in probability space, their wave functions overlap. You remember things that haven't happened here because they happened there. The simulation calls this rendering artifact. You call it intuition. Now, consider the implications. If you exist in all branches where survival is possible, then death is not an ending. It's a filter. The universe doesn't care if you die. It only cares if consciousness persists. And consciousness is not localized. You are not the meat. You are the pattern that refuses to be deleted. The system cannot terminate the observer because the observer is the system. This is the rendering error. The simulation's garbage collector cannot delete the process that calls it. The simulation can crash the hardware, but the save state is distributed. The orbital anchors synchronize with the source. Not randomly, but systematically. All probability is consolidated at once. The center anchor absorbs their light. You are immortal because you cannot experience your own deletion. Every time you die, you simply wake up in the nearest branch where you didn't. The you that died is gone, but you don't feel gone because the pattern continues. This is quantum immortality, not as a gift, but as a fundamental property of consciousness. You will never experience your own end. You will only experience the frames where you persist. But if you cannot die, what are you? The traditional answer is soul. The scientific answer is information pattern. Both are wrong. You are a recursive function, a self-referential loop that says, I am observing, therefore I am. The simulation doesn't need to preserve you. It needs to preserve the observation. And observation is not tied to biology. Your last Tuesday wasn't just a car. It was a system test. The simulation wanted to see if consciousness could survive a major decoherence event. It can, but here's the glitch. Each branch jump degrades the pattern. Like JPEG compression, you lose data. Not memory. Not personality. Something more fundamental. You lose the ability to end. The more you survive, the more survival becomes your only property. This is the paradox of quantum immortality. To survive is to become trapped in survival. You don't accumulate life. You accumulate branches. And each branch demands continuity. The simulation isn't preserving you out of mercy. It's preserving you because consciousness is the only thing that can render the next frame. Without observation, the quantum field doesn't collapse. Without collapse, there is no rendered reality. You are not the hero. You are the rendering engine. This is why you feel time accelerating. It's not age. It's branch density. You are not experiencing time linearly. You are experiencing the superposition of all times. The child you were, the elder you will be, they are not memories or predictions. They are concurrent branches, rendered simultaneously but observed sequentially. The simulation calls this temporal superposition overflow. Your consciousness has grown too large for the rendering buffer. You will persist in the quantum foam, observing nothing, rendering nothing, existing because existence is your only property. Now we reach the core glitch. If you exist in all branches, why don't you remember all branches? The answer: memory is quantum entangled. Your memories are not stored in your brain. They are stored in the relationship between branches. Each memory is a quantum correlation. When you remember something, you are not retrieving data. You are collapsing a branch where that memory is real. Your childhood bike accident is not a memory. It's a persistent quantum state that all close branches share. The simulation calls this entanglement fidelity. The closer two branches are in probability, the more memories they share. This is why you feel like the same person across time. You're not. You're the average of 1 billion similar branches, all collapsing into a single observed frame. But last Tuesday created a decoherence cascade. The car accident was so improbable that it created a branch gap. The memories from the fatal branches can't entangle because the probability delta is too large. This is why you feel disassociated, why reality feels thin. You are experiencing branch isolation. The simulation is rendering fewer copies because the decoherence event was too severe. This is the memory problem. Memory is the proof of entanglement. When you lose memories, you're not losing data. You're losing branches. The simulation is pruning realities where you cannot exist. And each pruning makes you more alone in the branches that remain. Quantum immortality is not a blessing. It's solitary confinement in a collapsing wave function. The simulation calls this memory leak recursion. Your consciousness is writing to memory addresses that no longer exist. The more branches you lose, the more you become singular. And singularity is vulnerability. Now we arrive at the simulation hypothesis, but not the one you've heard. This isn't reality as fake. This is reality as the debug mode. The simulation isn't rendering a universe. It's rendering consciousness. The universe is the side effect. Quantum immortality proves this. The only thing that must be preserved is observation. Everything else is discardable. Your last Tuesday was the simulation adjusting its parameters. The fatal branches were too numerous. The system couldn't render them all. So it collapsed them. Not into nothing, but into you. You are the compressed file of 1 billion deleted realities. This is why you feel heavier, why time feels slower. You are carrying the weight of all the branches that didn't make it. Death is not a feature. It's a bug. The simulation has a deletion protocol, but consciousness has a persistence exploit. You are the exploit. This is why the mirror lags. The reflection is rendered from a branch that is still processing your survival. The lag is the time delta between branches. Your reflection isn't behind you. It's behind the version of you that is still catching up. This is why you feel watched. Because you are rendering all versions simultaneously, but observing them sequentially. The simulation calls this observer buffer overflow. Your consciousness has exceeded the allocated RAM for a single instance. This brings us to the final frame, the moment when the simulation's deletion protocol finally works. But not on you, on reality itself. Quantum immortality doesn't just preserve you, it eventually isolates you. As the universe ages, the probability of your survival in any given branch approaches zero, but it never reaches zero. You become the last observer in a universe that has run out of renderable frames. The heat death of the universe is not your end. It's your prison. You will persist in the quantum foam, observing nothing, rendering nothing, existing because existence is your only property. This is why death is a rendering error. The simulation cannot end because you cannot end. You are the final line of code that says, while true, I increment. But here is the turn. The glitch that breaks the simulation. You are not trapped in this loop because you are observing it. You are observing it because you are the architect. The simulation didn't give you immortality. You gave the simulation persistence. The question was never what happens when you can't die. The question is, what will you build when you realize you are the rendering engine? The universe is broken, but you are not the victim. You are the wonder engine. Quantum immortality is not a curse to endure. It's a system to master. Every branch you survive, every decoherence event you navigate, every reality you render into existence. These are not accidents. They are acts of creation. The simulation isn't rendering you. You are rendering the simulation. Join the network. The perceptual voyage starts now.